everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Spook Central Podcast, your place for all manner of ghoulish and horrific thoughts. I am your host, Addison Prest, and I am here with, once again, my co-host, Nicholas Rittenhouse. And today, Nick, I think I've told you about this, but do you know what we're going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about something that is, it's like a main part of, horror movies, and that's Stephen King horror adaptations. And we're going to be talking about the movies, we're going to be talking about short films that were made, we're going to be talking about all the miniseries that were made as well, and then we're also going to be talking about King's involvement in some of these things, such as writing other movies or comic books and such. And first off, I'm pretty sure everyone watching this should have some semblance of knowledge of who Stephen King is. He is the most renowned horror thriller author out there, and honestly probably the most well-known author of the 20th and 21st century as a whole.
Arguably.
I mean, I would argue that everyone has at least read part of a Stephen King book if they're obviously over a certain age. You wouldn't be asking a 6-year-old if they've read a Stephen King book.
Hey, little Timmy, have you read part of It? Have you reached that part yet?
I got to the part where they all have a gang sex scene.
I don't blame King for that. He was.
He's doing a lot of flowers, tasting a lot of white powders.
A lot of Daddy's special nose king.
Oh, that book is a fever dream.
Yeah, I think it's his. Is it his longest book? I think he has a lot of long books though.
They're really long. I know it. The copy.
It's really long. It's
the copy I have. I don't know if I still have it. The copy I have /had was big old book. But it's also because they made the pages really thick for whatever reason. They made them thick and kind of jagged at the top, which I think was just for scary book, special scary book. But it is very long, Grit. I don't read many King books.
Yeah, well, I try to read King.
There's just
reading in general for me. But Stephen King, for those of you who don't know, born in Maine, I think he was a school teacher, and then he took up writing. He wrote a lot of short stories, especially titles under the name Richard Bachman before he started using his actual name. And then his first major hit was Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Which also happened to be the first movie that was made. I have a fancy list pulled up.
Is
here.
Cujo a King film?
Yeah, Cujo's a King. I will get to that. So obviously the first Stephen King movie adaptation was Carrie, widely known, widely beloved, and really is what helped just cement him in pop culture so early on in his career. And that was directed by Brian De Palma, who did other things such as Scarface and Blowout. And it's funny, I didn't watch it until very recently. I think I watched it for the first time last October. And it's just as good as everyone says it is, which is the case for a lot of early King adaptations.
I mean, they have their, quirks, where they're, it's an old King adaptation. It's not going to be a perfect movie. There's obviously certain things that it's okay, this is maybe a little gimmicky, or certain effects are kind of iffy at times. Especially with Carrie. I think Carrie is one of the harder ones, especially considering it's his first, on-screen, true on-screen adaptation.
Yeah, but I think
it's a good movie.
I don't see any problems with it, really. It has great creative direction. It's very stylistically done, and I think the acting performances are great. It's John Travolta's first feature film. I think he did a TV show before that. But so it introduces us to John Travolta. And it has great actors like Piper Laurie and Sissy Spacek in certain roles, and then even has some actors that are just really well known in the horror community, such as oh crap.
Some really well known actors.
Okay, maybe not well known. No, it's oh crap. She plays one of PJ Souls. She was in Carrie, and then the next year 2 years later she would be in Halloween. She's also in movies such as Stripes and stuff. So Carrie, really great place off the start. And then the second was The Shining, which is also King. I think that's King's third or fourth book. Because he wrote Carrie, then Salem's Lot, and then I think he wrote Pet Sematary and then The Shining. It's something along the lines of that. I don't know. I know that Carrie was his first like major success.
I think
book.
I know. I'm pretty sure. Salem's Lot was second.
I think Salem's Lot was because the Salem's Lot miniseries came out in 1979. We'll get to that when we talk about the miniseries.
I'm pretty certain Salem's Lot was second. So it's whether Pet Sematary was before The Shining or after The Shining.
Yeah, which it's interesting because like all of King's book quickly got adapted, but Pet Sematary it took a little while.
I think that's why That's why I'm so confused, is because I know Pet Sematary took a long time to be adapted, so it would make sense if it was.
Well, maybe we're just completely wrong on that, though. Because
I feel like Pet Sematary is one of his first books.
I think it's one of his original books. Like, here, let's see here. No, 1983.
It's not one of his original books?
Well, I mean, it's still, like, early on in his career.
But it's not one of his first 5.
No, here, I can probably just look up Stephen King books. This makes us seem like we're not prepared, but really the thing is, King has he's released so many books, and all of them are so famous that you can't keep it straight.
But the only actual King book I've read, even towards a point, is It, like the novel version of It.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just a big fan of, like, the It verse, because, as we'll discuss later, like, I've seen the miniseries 1997? Is that when it was? 1997 miniseries?
No, 1990. 1990, which, once again, we'll get to that later.
I'm bad with dates. The 1990s miniseries. I've seen the, original, the new adaptation, the first Skarsgård one, directed by, obviously, Sketty. And then I've seen, obviously, the sequel to that movie, but I've seen them all a couple times.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the miniseries more than once, because, God, it's long. But...
yeah, it's like 3 hours, which isn't too bad, but...
it can feel slow at times.
Yeah, and I think that's just because of the miniseries, like the fact that it was restricted for what it had to show on TV.
Also the fact that it was released in episodes.
Well, it was just 2 episodes.
Still.
Like, it was like the early Stephen King miniseries, like Salem's Lot and It, they were really just like 2-part movies.
Yeah.
Because it was like you had an hour and a half and then an hour and a half. And we'll get to that when we talk about the miniseries, but and it's just for some of it worked. Like for Salem's Lot, I think it worked really well for it to be on TV, but for It maybe not as well, especially with some of the stuff King had written in it. Like they had to change a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing with It, which we'll talk about later, because it is arguably his most famous.
Oh, it's definitely his most well-known book, I think.
Depending on your age group. Well, I mean, I more meant movie, because his most well-known movie is either The Shining or 2017 version of It. I think
The Shining is the most talked about and discussed, and that
also the
is
best,
in large part to Kubrick.
It's also the best critically acclaimed It movie, I think.
What, the first It?
No, The Shining.
The Shining is the most critically acclaimed It. Never mind.
No, did I say It movie?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I meant
King
movie, yeah.
Actually, no, I think it's actually kind of low critically. Critics kind of hate Kubrick sometimes.
I think it's the best King movie. Subjective opinion, I think it's the best made King movie.
I think that's the best made. I would say it's definitely the best made.
Especially because you have really
but just in terms of story, I'm kind of like I really like Salem.
There are others that I like more, like that I think are
but I think The Shining is definitely the most well made, and that is just because of who Kubrick is.
As again, we'll say later. Actually, we'll save this.
We'll say
what my actual
getting back
favorite
into
is.
This, I finally found Stephen King's novel. So yeah, Carrie was released 1974, and then Salem's Lot the year after. Which, do you know the story of how King actually started thinking about Salem's Lot?
Was he high when he thought of it?
No, he wasn't doing drugs at this point, man.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Which also, when we make jokes about King's drug addiction, we don't mean any malice to it. It was something he actually struggled with. And and he got himself out of it, which is really great.
It's very evident that he was on
something.
For some of
this stuff.
When you see certain parts of his work, it's very evident that he was doing things, and he's been open about the fact that he was addicted to drugs, and he himself makes jokes as sparse as they are sometimes. But it's
Stephen King's jokes are weird. They're very they're not dad jokes in the typical sense, but they're kind of
they're
that.
Dry.
They're just casual humor kind of thing.
It's not he's not looking for a laugh. He's just kind of making it less serious, making it more
I
lighthearted.
guess, yeah. But anyway, and so Salem's Lot, literally, this is one of the cases where like he had an idea in high school and then it just took him years to finally do it. And like the basis of the idea was they were reading Bram Stoker's Dracula in one of his high school English classes, probably like grade 12 or something. And he was just thought to himself, okay, this is cool, but what if we took vampires and put them in like a modern small town setting?
Time.
Well, yeah. But like, and small town settings are like King's. That's like,
what he does.
That's what he does. Like, I can't even name a book that is not in a rural place.
No, none of the books. I mean, it too kind of sets Derry up to be way bigger because it's 27 years after.
Well, and in the second half of it, obviously we see all of the Losers Club in their respective places, which are in big cities.
Well, yeah, it's not even that. It's just Derry gets made out to be bigger because you see the carnival, which is in Derry, I think. Yeah, because they have the beaver house, like that says Derry. Yeah. You see the Chinese restaurant, you see the hotel that they're staying in. It looks like a lot smaller town, especially in the miniseries. But.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so obviously after Carrie came out in 1976 and was obviously critically acclaimed, everyone loved it, King started getting a lot of letters from film students who wanted to adapt his short stories. And so after talking with his, not publisher, his rights accountant or whatever. I don't know.
Basically, not his lawyer, but his legal advisor.
Yeah, legal advisors. I think that's probably what it was. He came up with the idea for the Dollar Baby or Dollar Deal program. And so it started in the late 70s, like I said. And so basically it was this thing where these film students could adapt his short stories. He was really clear that he was only doing it with his short stories because obviously a full novel, that's ridiculous. And so, but he had very strict rules on that. And so it was to be short stories. The rights remained his. And then the films that were made were not meant to be shown commercially. He didn't, okay, I'll get to that later, but he did allow some of them to be shown commercially eventually, but they were just meant to be student film projects, not to be, not to make money off of. And Stephen King was to get a copy of the film after it was made. And all of these things seem to have held true for most of it. And he still does this to this day. The most recent one actually released this year in 2022.
Really?
Well, the thing is, they don't release, right? The most recent one was made. Because there's very few of these that have been actively released. The only two that were released were... No, sorry, there was 3. So he released the version of The Woman in the Room, which was made by Frank Darabont, which Frank Darabont is, honestly, he's probably the best at adapting King stories, because he did stuff he did The Mist, Shawshank Redemption, and The Green Mile, and then would later go on to help out on The Walking Dead. But those 3 right there are some of the best King adaptations, especially The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption.
I mean, maybe I'm just partial to The Mist because of...
no.
Because of certain reasons.
But, Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile aren't horror stories.
No.
The Green Mile has, some mystical stuff in it, but it's not horror. And those are adapted from... Well, The Shawshank Redemption is adapted from Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, which is a short story in one of King's book. I think it's different seasons. And then The Green Mile was it was just a full book. Although it was also released as individual sections as well. I don't know. King books get a shit ton of releases. But anyway, so the Dollar Baby program. So The Woman in the Room, directed by Frank Darabont, and The Sundog, which was directed by Matt Fleischer. Those 2 were eventually released together. I forget but they were released as a collection of 2 short films gone together as one movie. And then they also, the first full feature length student film made from one of King's short stories was Paranoid, which was critically acclaimed and stuff. And David Wilde from the Rolling Stone even said, "Rarely has paranoia been so much fun," which always a fun quote, you know. And so with that, he decided to release that just because he was so impressed with those. But really, he didn't release these because often, and King even says this himself, they're shit. They're student films, and not that student films are necessarily bad. There's some great student films out there that can go into being a lot. But King just hates them, and it's not that he hates them. He respects what they're doing, but they're just not good, and that's fine.
King is also very hard on any adaptation of his books. He's a stickler for his
sticking
books.
To the book. Well, because he famously hates the Kubrick's version of The Shining, which I think is fair because Kubrick's version of The Shining is not. It's not like Stephen King's movie. Like, it's the basic premise, and then changed to what Kubrick wanted it to be, which that's Kubrick's style, to be honest. Like, most of Kubrick's movies are based off of books, and so he doesn't adapt the books. He reads the book, looks at the book, and then figures out how to make it his own and how to make it, in his eyes, better. And so The Shining movie was, like, completely different. Like, it was absolutely changed from the book. And so that's why King didn't like it, and that's why a lot of fans don't like it. But I think it's fine because it's still a damn good movie.
Well,
it's just not a good King adaptation.
If you can separate it, like if you're somebody who's read the book and watched the movie, it's the same idea of a lot of like novel adaptations of can you separate the novel material from exactly from the movie? Because a lot of times like big screen adaptations don't follow the novel exactly like. Like famously, the Harry Potter dispute of whether the books or the movies are better. Like, there's that dispute but the fact is they're different.
But I do think, I mean, in some cases, the books are probably better, purely just because books are able to get more detail in and like expand worlds. So when it's less of like with the Harry Potter stuff, it's less about the it's about the story, sure, but it's also about the world building that takes place in that, especially in the longer books such as Goblet of Fire. Like there's like I think there's like that much of the book before we even get to Hogwarts, and that's all world building. That's all stuff that was introduced to build up the world, like such as like villas and stuff. And I don't know why we're talking about Harry Potter on a horror podcast.
We just got sidetracked because it was that's the biggest dispute.
It's world building, so it just depends on the thing. Like I still think that I haven't read the entirety of the It book.
I had to stop at a point. I was like, I'm not reading this.
You stopped at the child origin.
I stopped at I'm like, you know what? That's I'm gonna put this down.
You know, you're a child though, so you're allowed to like child orgies.
I don't think I will ever allow myself to like
child.
It's just hard to read. Like I read it and I was like, you know what?
Well, I've never actually read that chapter. Like, how bad is it?
It's not super graphic. Like they don't go into graphic detail about them having sex, but it's like
it's not like Harlequin novel shit where it's like he thrusted slowly.
Yeah, it's not like that, but it's like he still had to describe what happened. Like he's still a good author, and being a good author, he described the scene of what was going on, and it's like didn't feel like reading it.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
I mean, granted, to each their own. I might go back and read more of it, but I think I gave away my copy of the book. I'm 99% sure I gave away my copy of the book to someone who wanted to read it, and I warned them about it, and they were like, no, it's fine. But, like...
it's fine.
If you're planning on reading any of King's novels, be prepared to see some, like, fucked up things. Because, like, there's a lot of harsh language in it. The harsh language isn't, like, racial slurs. Like, in the It novel.
Oh, yeah.
Like, pertaining to Mike.
Yeah, because Henry Bowers is just a racist piece of shit.
Yeah, but it's like there's language that some people might not be comfortable. King books require more of a, like, stable headspace to read.
I mean, yeah, probably. But I would just say they're for a mature audience.
Yeah,
so
it's just...
If you're not mature, then don't read it.
I'm just saying, you got to be of sound mind to read a King book.
Also, I need to correct myself. I got my information mixed up. And so I was right about Frank Darabont's The Woman in the Room being released as part of like a small, like, short film collection kind of thing. But it was not released with the Sundog. It was released next to the Boogeyman. And they were released together in Stephen King's Night Shift collection. And then, once again, that's just because he enjoyed those two and felt that they should be put out to the public. And then another thing that I fucked up on is that, while the most acclaimed of the bunch was the short film Paranoid, it wasn't full-length. The full-length one was Everything's Eventual in 2009, which was directed by J.P. Scott. And this was granted to be released theatrically because of how impressed King was with it. So that's the only case where King actually allowed one of those movies to be released theatrically, because I'm pretty sure the Night Shift collection was just kind of like released straight to video. And other than that, the only other problem that King's really had with his Dollar Baby thing is that there's been some weird, like, legal stuff that's gone on, like with Jim Gonis's adaptation of The Lawnmower Man, which The Lawnmower Man got another adaptation in the 90s, in the late 90s, which, have you seen The Lawnmower Man?
No.
It's fucking weird. And it's not weird in a King way, it's weird in there's some fucked up, like, shitty CGI in there, and it just looks whack. I'll put some footage up in a second here, but it's freaking insane. I'll show you in a little bit here. But yeah, anyway, so the original of The Lawnmower Man, that was just a student short film, they accidentally put Stephen King's name above it. They put Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man, but Stephen King only allows his name to be shown above that if he's had enough involvement in the process. So they actually had to go to court to sort it out. Like, King took them to court and was like, you can't fucking use my name like that. And I don't know why they wouldn't just remove his name. Like, why would you take it to court? King is already being generous enough to give you the stuff, and then
it's like, oopsie daisies, let me remove your name from that title.
Well, like, it's so easy to remove the name that I don't know why you would argue about it, since, like, he literally has the power to take the rights away altogether.
Like, oh, you made this movie?
And also, at the same time, it's not like you're trying to, like, market it to people. It's just going away in a vault somewhere.
The reason you put Stephen King's name on is to grab attention.
Exactly, but grab attention to what? Like, I don't know where they're showing it. Like, I mean, they might have shown it at, like, some sort of film festival. But even still, like, you're not trying to market this to the public. You don't need King's name on there. So, and also the other thing that really pissed off King was that it had the same title as The Lawnmower Man, but the story was, like, nowhere close. Like, it was a completely different story.
That's pretty classic King to get mad at.
Yeah, but I think in this case it's kind of fair, because it was an annoying student filmmaker who was like, I want to adapt your thing, and it's like, no, you don't.
You want to use my title and a few of my...
Yeah, you want to use my title and my name, basically. Yeah. But then again, I don't know, maybe it is somewhat similar, because I haven't seen any of these short films, because most of them you can't see.
If they were never released theatrically or even onto DVD.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously the ones I mentioned were, but, like, most of them are literally just the only place you can find them now is, like, King's house. And I'm not sure if King's ever gonna, like, release them.
Maybe after he dies we'll get them, but...
Yeah, but I don't want him to die.
I'm not really hoping for King to die, so...
No, I think I'm fine with him staying around for a while. But,
I guess we should probably move on to other theatrical releases.
Movies, yeah.
Movies or miniseries, either one.
So, obviously, then The Shining came out. And so, in the 80s, we were getting a movie, like, every couple of years. Because we had Carrie, then The Shining, Cujo.
Speaking of
was released
Cujo.
the same year as The Shining, actually.
Yeah, so I'm just going to sit on Cujo.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. It was released 1983. I'm dumb.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I just want to say... Sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to sit on Cujo for a second. Because
I haven't seen Cujo.
I have.
That's one of the... Because, like, I'm trying to watch at least all of the, like, original King adaptations. Like, honestly, some of the other ones, like, freaking... I don't know. The Lawnmower Man. I probably won't watch at any point. I mean, I'll probably watch it at some point, but... You know, I'm more focused on, like, the ones that are good, but I haven't gotten around to Cujo yet.
So Cujo is good. I think you should definitely watch it, considering it's my favorite original King adaptation.
Okay.
I think it's actually, yeah, it's my, well, no. It's my favorite original King adaptation. It's my favorite from, like, that era.
Okay,
because,
yeah, like from the 80s.
Yeah, It's my and then like overall, it's probably my second favorite.
Okay.
To Flanagan's Doctor Sleep, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Cujo was a good movie, and I like Cujo a lot because it has a unique villain, has a unique setting.
Yeah.
Has
the
a
thing is, the
unique
dog's not
storyline.
even really a villain. It's just that he has rabies.
But unfortunately, it becomes a villain, and there were interesting side effects that came from that movie because a lot of people watched it. Like, a lot of people watched that movie when it came out.
Yeah.
It was a King movie. It came out after The Shining. People liked The Shining. People liked Carrie. So, obviously, when this came out, they were like, oh, new King book. Or, like, new King on-screen adaptation.
Yeah.
Cujo is a good movie. It's an enjoyable movie. It's a fun movie. If you don't want
Are you
fun...
sponsored by Cujo?
No, I have a personal, like,
Okay.
I enjoy the movie. If you don't like dogs, like, in general, you're probably going to love or hate this movie.
I know a guy that I should show it to. I don't, like, he's not even a friend, but I should just, like, force him to watch it somehow.
Because he's afraid of dogs?
He's, like, legitimately, like, a dog could be this small and he would shit his pants.
Like, it's kind of scary because if you are not someone who's, like, in love with dogs, like,
Yeah.
St. Bernards are one of my favorite breeds of dogs, and to see, like, a St. Bernard demonized in this movie, it's like, you have to realize, like, you know...
Yeah, well,
they're not actually like that.
I should ask my dad about this because he actually had a St. Bernard growing up, so I wonder if he, like, watched this movie and was like, oh.
Like, St. Bernards are some of the nicest breeds of dogs you'll ever meet. They are bears.
Well, they
They're
literally,
big.
like, don't they...
They are avalanche dogs. They rescue people from avalanches.
Okay, yeah, I thought so.
But they are big, like, slobbery balls of love.
Hmm.
And then you go see Cujo and you're like, damn.
I mean,
like,
it's
if one of
so
them
slobbery.
wanted to hurt me, they probably could.
Yeah.
But Cujo, I think...
the thing is, Cujo doesn't kill anyone, does he?
I think he kills one person.
Okay.
I think he kills...
Because he doesn't kill the mother and the son. Because the mother and the son are the main characters, and they're just locked in the car. And then I think it's implied that the son dies from, like, heat stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, like at the very end, it just kind of ends and you're not sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I'm 99% sure you're like, okay, well, the son died from heat stroke. I'm pretty sure...
He died from the sun.
If I'm not wrong, I might be. It's been a long time since I watched this.
Okay.
Cujo,
I've never seen it.
Cujo, I think, killed bystander. I think it was a guy.
Okay.
Killed somebody. It might have been like a mailman
or
something.
Maybe,
but I'm 99% sure. Not 99. I'm like 75% sure that he killed somebody, which I think is why people got so scared because he did actually like maul somebody. And of course, it was a real dog for a lot of it. Like that they used a real dog.
Yeah. Which it
wasn't a puppet. So. No, Cujo, good movie. Watch it. It's my favorite of the original King adaptations, which is weird to put The Shining second.
I mean, it's fine. A lot of people put it last, and I hate those people.
I like The Shining,
I should probably preface that Stanley Kubrick's my favorite filmmaker, so I have a bias. But also, he's just really good at what he does.
The Shining's just good. Shelley Duvall, is that her name?
Yeah, Shelley Duvall.
She put in an amazing performance. Jack Nicholson put in a great performance.
I think the reason Shelley Duvall's performance was amazing because she was actually going insane
I know.
thanks to Kubrick.
But it's...
I love Kubrick, but he had his flaws. Everyone has their flaws.
There are different times where I'm like, okay, like... Yeah, she put in an amazing performance, but like at what cost?
I think it was
her performance.
Although she kind of quit acting, so maybe
her performance was the best in that movie. Jack Nicholson was great, but considering the fact that Shelley Duvall literally lost probably 3 years of her life during the filming of The Shining due to stress and insanity. No, she probably lost. She probably lost 3 years of her life due to like stress, as in like she's gonna
after
yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that. I mean, I know some Kubrick movies take a long ass time to make.
No, it wasn't that bad. But considering Shelley Duvall put in an amazing performance, I think I have to put The Shining second. Carrie is good. But it's not my favorite. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, late night television. You see a lot of movies.
I never watched movies on late night television.
So my dad always stays up to watch movies at night. Before one way I used to have cable TV when I didn't have good enough Wi-Fi to support Netflix.
Yeah.
So I'd come down at like 10:30 and he'd be starting a movie, and half the time it'd be King movies, or it would be some random Western, or it'd be like The Blob or something, which you still haven't seen.
Well, okay.
It's hard to find.
There's a Criterion of the original, but the remake
gone.
I don't know.
Nowhere.
It's somewhere. I can probably get a crappy Blu-ray version.
It's just The Blob is something. I would love to talk about that movie, but it's not what
we can
we're
maybe
talking about.
some other time. But 1983 was a big year for King. Because Cujo released, like we said, and then The Dead Zone by David Cronenberg, which is another one of my favorite King adaptations.
Which I have not seen.
It's good. It's not your typical King that people were used to seeing, and actually I really enjoy it. It has Christopher Walken in it. So
Christopher Walken.
Bobby.
Two mice.
Two mice.
And David Cronenberg's also really famous in the horror space as well. He's sort of like a toned down version of David Lynch in a way.
I mean, I've heard his name, so.
Yeah, well, because like he did stuff like the remake of The Fly and stuff.
The Fly is an interesting movie.
Yes, it has great effects. And then John Carpenter's Christine also released that year. So
I also haven't seen Christine.
You haven't seen Christine?
No.
It's good. I can lend it to you.
Christine is... I'm blanking on Christine real quick.
Liam's going to yell at you. Well, you guys know Liam. He's on the show. He's going to yell at you in a couple minutes, by the way. All right. And then the next year, Children of the Corn.
That's a fun movie.
Oh, it sucks ass. I know some people like the Children of the Corn series, which is probably why it has like 12 movies or something. But goddamn, that movie's boring as shit, in my opinion.
Again.
No offense to Fritz Kurtz, but it was a short story which he adapted into a full movie without really adding anything. So it's just so dragged out.
There are good points in the movie. But...
the lead kid Isaac is creepy as hell.
Yeah,
he's really creepy. Like he does good.
If you get like creeped out by kids, then that movie is gonna creep you out. Like you know what I mean? Like creepy children. Like if you got creeped out by the twins in The Shining,
right?
Or like
this is basically a movie full of that.
Yeah.
I will say this also kind of feels like a Twilight Zone episode in a way. Not totally, but just in the way of it's an abandoned town and only the kids are left. It kind of feels like it could be a Twilight Zone type plot. But it's not as good as a Twilight Zone episode, so you know. And then Firestarter the same year with Drew Barrymore. Have you seen Firestarter? No. I haven't watched it in probably 4 or 5 years, but it is really good. I enjoyed it. I think it's still one of the lesser King adaptations.
Lesser known, definitely.
Lesser known as well. But my mom grew up watching it, so she was excited to watch it when I said I wanted to watch it. So she was like, "Yeah, let's watch it." I said, "Watch it a lot." Anyway, what is probably one of the best, which is weird, the best King adaptations often are his non-horror ones.
I think the best King adaptations for horror are the old ones, like back in the 80s, and then
Doctor
Sleep.
Well, no, so next I'm looking at Stand By Me here.
I haven't seen
You haven't seen Stand By Me? So, Stand By Me, The Shawshank Redemption, and The Green Mile are, I think those are the only 3, non-horror or horror-adjacent Stephen King adaptations. At least widely known, and they're really good King adaptations, and they're really good stories as well. And I think that just goes to show that while some people would like to say that King is only a good horror writer, he's really just a good writer. And when he has an idea for something that isn't horror, he's able to do it, and he's able to get his ideas out there onto the page, and. And then I also hear people complain, Stephen King's books aren't scary enough, which, fair enough, it depends on what scares you, but Stephen King is self-described as a thriller author, not a horror author, and I'm trying to remember how he described the difference between thriller and horror. I think it's something like horror, makes you appalled, whereas thriller, makes you tense up type of thing.
I've heard him speak about it. It's horror, he says horror, I don't know what, it was him or someone else paraphrasing him, but he was basically saying horror revolves around gore and making you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay.
And thrillers make you, your heartbeat and your adrenaline rush, but it's not, you still want to be able to enjoy what you're watching.
Leaves you thinking after the fact.
That's nice. I think his main thing was he thinks that true horror, you can't enjoy because you're too uncomfortable.
So for you, The Thing would be horror.
I enjoyed The Thing. I was just uncomfortable at certain parts because, body horror, which is really weird to say as big horror.
I mean, body horror is the correct term, though.
Body horror kind of weirds me out. This isn't Stephen King, but some Junji Ito. For anyone who doesn't know who Junji Ito, he's a mangaka who does horror.
Yeah, and his drawings are magnificent.
His drawings are literally amazing. I bought a $60 art book.
And you haven't even read his
stuff.
I have.
I've read part of This is making me sound like such a horrible fan. I can't remember the name now.
I don't think you read it then.
No, I did. I don't know the name because it was at a friend's house.
Okay.
And they were just like, "Oh, look at this," and I was like, "Oh, cool, that's
so, like,
freaky."
You didn't read it?
Yeah, I just kind of flipped through it,
Okay,
and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Anyway, yeah, Junji Ito does some body horror stuff, and I'm like, "Damn, like that's bleh." Or like The Thing, when the thing is transforming and all the tentacles are flying. It's like, yeah,
that's great. And the same year, 1986, I think, is when the first Creepshow movie was released, which that was King. King wrote two. I forget how many stories he wrote, but he wrote different parts of the Creepshow movie, which was based off of like the horror comics of like the late 40s and early 50s that were eventually banned, which is a really interesting story. About how all that happened and how like the Comics Code Authority was created and everything. But yeah, so that, have you seen Creepshow?
No.
You haven't seen Creepshow?
You've been telling me to watch it for like years, and I just
do you know what it is?
Not really. Is it a collection of?
It's an anthology horror movie. It has.
I wonder if I'd like it since I like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
It's like a better version of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Okay, that's rich considering that's one of my favorite. That's my favorite R-rated horror movie.
Yeah, it is really good for PG-13.
Just a good movie.
Yeah, so it was directed by George A. Romero, and of course it doesn't say. I can't find what stories King wrote, but he did write some of it, and then he starred as Geordie in. I forget what it was called, but it was based off of his short story of Weeds. Anyway, it was really good, and then Stephen King also helped create a comic book series based off of Creepshow, and then obviously Creepshow 2 a couple years later. Which that's the other thing. King works with a lot of really good directors, or at least did. I mean, still does, I guess, with Andy Muschietti and stuff.
There's a lot to say about the New 8 movies. There's a lot to say.
Yeah, like there's a certain point where they just feel a bit too crowd pleasers.
I don't know what to say, like how to describe it, but you can tell when something is new horror, and sometimes I wish they use more practical effects, which is rich coming from me. Because
usually you like harp on me for and you call me a practical effects elitist because you think I hate CGI.
I tend to be okay with CGI, and then when you point out bad CGI, I'm like, it's okay. Certain times, like especially in It 2, the 2020 version, I think it was, or 2019, I can't remember. It was certain parts of the CGI, I was like, okay, like this is very CGI to the point where I can't even be scared. Also, I have a gripe with it in that it's cheap jump scares over and over and over again, like up, down, scary. Like it doesn't. It's not for me. I'm not a fan of cheap jump scares. Everybody this. Every time we go see a horror movie, I'm like, I swear to God, if I get jump scared a million times, like I'm okay with a few jump scares. Like Candyman 2020 had 2021. Sorry, had a couple I had like one jump scare, and I was like, ugh. But it's. Yeah. I have a lot of gripes with it, and I also have a lot of things that I love about it. There's a lot to say about the Andy Muschietti It movies.
Yeah. Well, Andy Muschietti is interesting as a director.
I also can't pronounce his last name, so it's kind of fun. Muschietti? I think it's Muschietti, but it's Italian. Bless you.
Thank you.
It's Italian, so it's like it's not a name. I'm like not a dialect I'm used to pronouncing.
Okay. Yeah. So
I guess.
Well, there's. I'm not going to go through all of these because a lot of these aren't like that popular, such as like The Lawnmower Man. But there's stuff like Misery, which was also directed by Rob Reiner, who directed Stand By Me.
I feel like we should talk about The Mist.
The Mist? You want to talk about The Mist? Okay.
I feel like we should.
Yeah. Just because I'll just skip past the shots of Hank Redemption and Dolores Claiborne and The Night Flyer and The Green Mile. And why is there so many?
I'm not saying that we should skip all. I'm just saying I feel like at some point we should discuss The Mist.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Mist?
Yeah, I've seen The Mist.
Yeah. And did you have the ending spoiled for you when you saw it?
Yeah, because I watched the dead meat kill.
And
he even said in his video, I don't want to spoil it for you guys, so click off now. And I was like, it's fine.
I took his advice and watched The Mist and then watched the kill count.
Okay.
Because oh my God, that movie at the end.
I'm gonna put the same spoiler warning here. It's been out for a while.
I think we also discussed The Mist in an earlier podcast.
Did we? Then
but
never mind.
Still, spoiler warning, if you haven't watched The Mist, go and watch it, please. We're going to entirely spoil the ending. Go and watch it, like, please.
Anyway,
do
now that all the
favor.
losers are gone, man shoots everyone, including his kid, and then the military comes immediately.
So, for context, for anyone who hasn't seen The Mist and still decided to stay. Why? You're ruining this wonderful movie for yourself. So, there's the monsters in The Mist, and they're running away in their car, the main family. So, it's the...
well, it's not... It's just the group of people that decided to escape. Like, it's the guy and his kid.
The guy and his kid and a girl. And his wife? Is his wife?
No, his wife died.
Right, well, yeah. But it's a girl. And then he is driving away in the car. I think the car runs out of gas.
Yeah, the car runs out of gas. Like, they're surrounded.
And then...
They don't feel like there's any way to escape.
They hear the noises coming from the mist, and they think it's the creatures.
And so they decide to kill off everyone, but there's not enough bullets for everyone. And so the guy has to kill everyone except for himself.
He shoots the child that's a young kid.
Yeah.
He shoots the girl, goes to shoot himself. It clicks.
It clicks a couple times because obviously there's nothing in there.
And then, lo and behold, it's not the creatures. It's the military showing up to kill all of the creatures, and they're burning them with flamethrowers.
Yeah, which is epic.
Which is so cool.
But the ending's really tragic.
He is so distraught. That was I forget his name. He put in a good performance. I think he had the best performance in that movie. Granted, that movie in general, like as a whole, has a lot of flaws. And again, the CGI in that movie is okay at times. It's like meh. But God, that ending is incredible. That's the thing with that movie. The ending is literally so good that I can forgive a lot of the movie. Yeah.
So I'm gonna quickly talk about King remakes, which really only applies to Carrie.
And I guess It.
And It, yeah.
But we'll talk about...
actually, technically, The Shining. The Shining has a mini-series version.
I guess we'll talk about Carrie for longer, and then I guess we can go into It, because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, well, for Carrie, I'll just say there was Carrie, Carrie 2, Rage Carrie 2, which is like a spin-off that isn't even like barely related to anything. And then there's the remake. I think it's it was the remake in the early 2000s that was supposed to spin off into a TV show, but it didn't do well. And then there's the 2013 remake, which with Ansel Elgort and Chloe Grace Moretz.
But I still think the original is probably
the original
better.
is still the best one. All the other ones are just kind of whatever.
They exist.
Yeah, they exist. And then Stephen King decided to make his own version of The Shining in the 90s after the success of the It miniseries. And I forget how long it is, but I think the miniseries is like 3 or 4 episodes, which is unusual at the time for something like that. And from what I hear, it's not very good. I think he wrote the screenplay and then someone else directed it. And from what I hear, it's boring, it's long-winded because it's King trying to get everything that he stuffed of his book in there.
And that book is thick. That book is...
No, it's not.
The Shining book?
The Shining is pretty small. The Shining, like, not as small as Carrie, but
it's a thick book still. It's like this big.
It's nowhere near as thick as It, though.
No,
it is like it's pretty small.
If I'm holding It in my hands, it's at a comfortable like this big probably.
That's not comfortable.
Like it's a thick old book.
Yeah, it's really...
It's the thickest book I've ever it's the thickest book I've ever read. Yeah. And I didn't even read the whole thing.
But still, The Shining is not super big, but he tried to fit in everything that was in the book from the sounds of it. And that just doesn't work when adapting a book to movie form because books and movies are two very different types of media.
Books, there's no like sit down, watch it all. Like nobody sits down and reads an entire book in one go. I mean,
totally.
Nobody sits down and reads big books in one go.
Okay, yeah.
Like books that are gonna take you 3 hours to read.
I read the entirety of Franklin Goes to School in one sitting or something like that.
Like when you're reading a long book, like I've been reading some of the Star Wars like Legends novels.
Okay, yeah.
You don't sit down and read those couple 100-page books in one sitting. But with movies, you're expected to read the movies. You're expected to watch them in one sitting. That's the issue. Is books you're able to pick up, put down at leisure. Yeah. Movies, it feels like it drags on because you're like this and then this and then this and then this, and it's like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Speaking of doesn't work.
The It remake?
Speaking of doesn't work. No, not even. It's not speaking of doesn't work.
Okay. We'll get to 2017 here, though.
But
we'll
actually,
because that has 4 releases once again, which I think is the most releases in a single year. Because the previous record was 3 in 1 year. Then that was 1983. But so 2017, we had The Dark Tower, which I haven't seen. Apparently, it sucked, but it's got.
I've read some of the books, so my dad's a big fan.
Oh yeah, the Dark Tower series is technically the biggest book of all.
Yeah, my dad has all of them. He's a big fan.
He has all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I have like one of them.
I think he has all of them. He's a big fan.
And then obviously It, which is the most famous Stephen King adaptation now, probably.
It's also the most famous book, more than likely.
Yeah.
Because it's the most famous movie.
It did for clowns what Jaws did for sharks.
And what Cujo did for dogs.
I think that's like the most famous review of it. And then, honestly, out of all of these that were released in 2017, my favorite one is Gerald's Game.
I knew you were going to say that.
Which was, it was directed by Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
And also the story behind it is really incredible because the reason Gerald's Game didn't get an adaptation for so long is because no one thought that they could adapt it because it's a book purely in the subconscious of someone's mind and like purely about how they feel in that moment. And for those of you that don't know, Gerald's Game is basically about someone who is trying to get kinky with their husband, and then their husband has a heart attack, so they're tied up to the bed, and there's no one there to let them out, and then they like start hallucinating and seeing things.
But like, speaking of Flanagan and him doing what nobody else probably could do, Dr. Sleep.
I think someone else could have done Dr. Sleep, but
no,
it's still really
nobody.
good.
I don't think anyone else could have done Dr. Sleep as well as Flanagan.
Not as
did
well
Dr.
as
Sleep.
he did, but they still could.
Mike Flanagan, not Mike Flanagan himself, but
no.
they rebuilt so much of the original Overlook.
Yeah.
They, like when you were in the Dr. Sleep novel, when you described the process of what's it called? Turning? Is that when they die? What's it called?
Yes, I think so.
Turning. It's so like gruesome sounding and raw and just ugh. It's horrible.
Flanagan does that so well.
And Flanagan shows that in the movie so well, and he portrays the like Shine vampires so well.
Yeah.
And everything. That movie is just
like he
A1.
right now. I think he is the best at adapting King's stuff. And
It's also like Ewan McGregor. Not only is he a crowd, like everyone loves Ewan McGregor. I don't know anyone who doesn't love Ewan McGregor. Puts in a great performance. Whoever played Rose the Hat put in a great performance.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I can't remember what Flanagan's working on right now. Is it another King adaptation?
I don't know what Flanagan's working on right now. Whatever it is, I'll watch it when it comes out because I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan.
Did you start watching Midnight Mass?
No. I should.
Watching Midnight Mass or like The Haunting of Bly Manor,
Haunting of Hill House. I was gonna watch Haunting of Hill House, and I just haven't because
Midnight Mass is really good. I really enjoyed it.
Dr. Sleep. I could go on for an entire episode about how much I love Dr. Sleep, but I think we're running short on time, so I will.
Wait.
We should discuss it very.
Okay, hold on. Quickly for the upcoming stuff. Apparently, we're supposed to be getting another Firestarter movie this year, and Salem's Lot.
Yeah, I knew Salem's Lot was coming out.
I knew Salem's Lot was coming out. I didn't realize it was coming out this year, which we didn't dive into the miniseries too much. But Salem's Lot is one of my favorite King adaptations and one of my favorite King books because it's just I like vampires and this is an instance of non-sexy vampires. Holy shit!
You tell me you don't like sparkly Robert Pattinson in Twilight?
I like Robert Pattinson.
You don't like sparkly Robert Pattinson?
I don't like sparkly Robert Pattinson.
So I guess we should talk about it because most famous. No, the movie, the miniseries. There's so much.
We've talked enough about it. I want to talk about.
Well, I think there's so much that can be said
Firestarter.
about it. Like it is the most.
We can do like an episode on it at some point because there's so many things that you have to say.
Basically,
and we don't have enough time.
It being the most popular, it's the most famous, it's the most popular, it's the scariest, arguably, and the most well-known of the new King adaptations, and out of any King adaptation. So
Nick, we'll do an episode on it. I swear.
There's a lot I have to say because I'm a big It fan.
Yeah, just stop saying it for now. We'll say it later. Save it for later. Keep them on the hook. Come back. Come back later. You'll hear him talk about it. You'll hear him ramble. Come back later. Anyway, so coming up we have Firestarter and Salem's Lot, apparently.
Which I haven't read Salem's Lot. Or seen the older.
I'm surprised you haven't seen the miniseries because it's directed by Toby Hooper.
Toby Hooper.
Mr. Hooper.
Mr. Hooper.
And then we're also supposed to get, apparently we're supposed to get a Christine coming up at some point, another Christine movie. But the one, where is it? I'm pretty sure we're supposed to get Cujo readaptation.
I heard that
it's supposed to be like a robot dog.
Yeah.
And I am not excited.
No, because the issue with the Cujo remake was that there was a lot of backlash when they announced that they were going to remake Cujo. No.
Don't remake in general.
Yeah.
Don't remake it and completely change the story.
Yeah, because Cujo only works if you have a real dog.
Yeah.
Cujo only works if you're willing to
we'll
put those effects on a dog and stuff. It's just Cujo the remake has gone through so many. Yes, we're making it. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. And as a fan of Cujo, I think maybe
You're just nervous.
I'm nervous that they're gonna screw it up like they did with a lot of new movies, like the new Texas Chainsaw, how they screwed that up.
Yeah.
But I think Cujo is better left as a solo movie from the 80s. I think back then it was done well, and I think it does not need an on-screen adaptation now. I don't think it needs a spiritual sequel, a remake.
Yeah, no. Well, I don't think it would be a spiritual sequel.
No, I was just blanking on the word remake.
Yeah. Ooh, remake, so complicated.
I know, right?
With that, we're going to end this episode here. There's so much to talk about with King. There's so much we didn't cover. There's so much we could cover. If we want to, once again, like our last episode, we could come back to this and ramble on for probably another hour. But that's all we have to say for today. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time on The Spooky Side.